I'll just start by introducing you, and then we'll just get into it, and kind of wherever the conversation takes you. This is all about you. I'm just kind of guiding it, and I'm just lending you the mic, and yeah, whenever, if you're ready, we could dive in.
Yeah, let's try it.
Okay, cool. All right, everybody. Welcome back to B2B One-on-One. I am so excited to have my dear friend and previous co-star, Brytni Sarpy, on today. I would have had her on no matter what, but I just think it's really important right now to amplify the Black community, and I know that you are of mixed race, and I just want to hear everything you have to say. This is all about lending you the mic here, and I guess let's just dive in. Thank you so much for joining me. I love you.
Thank you for having me, especially at a time like this. I mean, we're at such a cross section in life where we're all realizing what's really, really important, things that we actually need to be talking about and discussing. And thank God to know someone like you who's been leading that even before we actually all came to this point where we all need to sit and pay attention and listen and see how each other are feeling. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And yeah, like I was saying, it's like, I feel like you could say racism is one of the biggest forms of bullying. So it seems pretty important to speak on this, and I'm so happy that you're my first person for this, I guess, portion of the series. I wanted to talk a little bit. I would love for you to expand. We were kind of saying earlier on diversity versus inclusivity, especially in our industry for people of color, and how that's been for you, what you've experienced or what you've heard other people experience. I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, before I jump into that, I'll even say, just with everything coming up with the movement, it's been really interesting for me to kind of go back into the recesses of my mind and pull out those feelings that I've kind of buried.
Sure.
Because I'm not always at the forefront of the most blatant racism. And, you know, I feel like a lot of the things that I deal with are systemic, which will lead us back to working in the industry. But it's interesting when you kind of go under the layers of things that you've just been dealing with day in and day out, and you just keep moving forward and you don't actually take the time to feel those things. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, it's a sensitive time for everyone. Yeah. And for anyone who can't relate to this movement and to what's going on, I hope that you'll listen with your heart instead of your ears, so you can just understand that someone's telling you, you know, their true feelings. It's in no way meant to put you in a place of discomfort or in a place of agitation, but if it does, maybe think about why it does.
Right.
But all that to say, wrapping it up, I guess, let's see, I think I've been dealing with race in my work since the beginning. I started in theater, and there aren't a lot of plays
right,
I think, by Black playwrights, and then there are, and even the ones that are, they're very specific to straight African American, so there's not a lot where like someone of mixed race really has a chance. But luckily I majored in theater at UC Santa Barbara. I got my BFA in acting. And we kind of just did, like, I wouldn't say colorblind casting, but it was definitely, like, I've played a Japanese woman, so I guess to be white and completely blonde, I had blonde wig. So we were just a little more open and accepting, but
trying to find where you fit.
I've always been, you know, told, like, yeah, you should definitely go on acting because you're mixed, so like you can play anything. But it's funny for me, at least, and for I think a lot of people that I know in my position, where you can have two sides of a coin. Our industry is really about, or has been about, just picking one or the other. And that's because our industry is based in capitalism. It's based in selling. It's based in money. And it's based in, meeting demographics. And so they want to sell this type of person to this type of people. And unfortunately, as an artist, you don't want to feel like the thing that you do for your art is, based in that kind of, it's just meant to make money.
Right. That too. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we do it as our career. We do make money from it. It is our income. But when you're an artist, you hope that a good portion of it is also just for the sake of the art and just for the sake of reaching people. And
it feels like we're pushing further and further away from that, in my opinion. I feel like a lot of things nowadays are based on numbers and followers, and that's a separate arena in itself. But it is really sad sometimes, just like in general, to know that like something you love more than anything in the world, and our freedom of just being able to express ourselves and do what we love most, like really comes down sometimes to just the smallest, most ridiculous things. And
but it's not even just our industry, it's our country. Everything. Why we're where we are right now, it's because we're all basically selfish versus selfless, and we care more about having more than the next person. So there are issues, but that's kind of what drove like my discussions with talking about diversity versus inclusivity. I was saying that's kind of what I learned going into this business professionally, was the need for the minority was about diversity. It was about diversifying. It was about making people happy on the surface, filling a quota, making sure that there is at least one person of color in this production, and you've mixed it up. Is there an Asian there? Great, we're done.
Right.
And it was less about inclusivity, which is about actually wanting to hear the voice of someone other than, what we've seen with 85 to, 95% of our movies and our televisions, which is the white voice.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a big indication of where we are in the world too. Like right now, even with dealing with the Black Lives Matter movement, we're all about checking off boxes and, okay, well, this is the problem. Let me throw some money at it. We're going to donate this much money. But are we actually digging deep and listening to the cries of the people who are disenfranchised, to actually have problems? I don't think we are. And that's kind of the problem that I've dealt with in the industry, is there hasn't been a concern for inclusivity, for actually caring about someone else's voice. And because it's bigger than just what's on the screen. It's about the people who are doing hair and makeup. It's about your camera crew. It's about those eyes. We want to see their perspective. We want to see the writing room with someone who's Indian American, or, it just has to be everywhere. And by having a production that's 98% white behind the scenes and in front of the camera, and then throwing in one Black person, do we really feel like that's representative of that person's slice of life?
Right. I really hope that changes.
Cassie just summed up. That's like the feeling of Black people in this country right now.
Yeah.
Everything is given second rate, and they're compared and thought of as less than a human. And we have all of these stereotypes that are put on us, and we're always at the starting gate 10 steps behind everyone else. So it's just...
And what can we be doing better? And just what are the positives and negatives? I don't know. It's hard for me to iterate, but I feel like you'll do a better job at it.
What I'm taking from what you're saying is, like, for me, what social media has meant in this climate is that, like you said, this is not a moment. This is a whole movement. And this is not just the Black Lives Matter movement. This is a movement for our country. Like, we're moving forward. We're actually dissecting the Constitution. We're going through our laws. We are changing how we do us, how we interact, how we are, what systems govern us. Yeah. And it's not going to be a short process. It's not going to be, it's not a popular thing to just jump onto and you'll be able to jump off the bus when the next thing comes. This isn't, it's not a TikTok.
Right.
This is real life. And the thing about it is, what this movement is about is essentially getting us as a country out of our selfishness. We are a very self-based country. And like I was saying in the beginning of the talk, it's all about take. It's all about what we can get over someone else, and that somehow empowers us. Right. And what this new decade is showing us, what this new time is showing us, what this movement is showing us, we're not doing self anymore. We're doing selflessness, and we have to come together if life. And social media is typically garnered towards self. and this is my page, and you can watch me do this, and I can be that, and it's about me, and here's what I ate for lunch.
Right.
But it's a different tool now. We built it up to what we have, and everyone's kind of codependent on it. So it's not going to go anywhere at this point. But if we start understanding what it needs to be used for at this point, and it's no longer about self, or it's less about self, it's more about us. And so for me, it's such a tool of reaching people, of connecting people. This is my platform now. This is where I have whatever 1,000 people looking in and checking into what I think about life and what's going on with me on a Tuesday. And here's what I want you to know. Here's what's going through my head that I want you to learn. It means something more.
Yeah.
So it should be a great thing because we're adding dimension and meaning to social media.
Right. Fans. And for my page and your fans, like, do you have any little...
I don't think that we should be pressuring people to do what it's not in them to do. You don't have to educate people on something you don't know much about. Right. You don't have to be the person who's reposting on their stories 20 things about what's going on, how you can help. Right. That's just not your voice. And that's okay.
Right.
You don't have to be that person, but what you can be is you can be a person who listens. It doesn't mean that you have to necessarily post every day that you still care about the movement. You still are proactive, because it's not about that. And that's judgmental. And who am I to say, what if I don't have one at all? Am I not for the movement if I don't have an Instagram? It's silly.
Exactly.
But I just hope that everyone's at least taking the time to listen, and they're not treating this as if it's a trend and something that they have to get trying to be, accepted in LA or wherever it's cool to be. Right. Maybe you're used to just showing 9,000 plates of food that you eat every day, and you're facing 10 different directions in lighting. Maybe for a day, just take the time to just read. Go on and actually just sit down and watch these 5-minute videos that people are posting.
I'm so excited to hear what you have to say. In our email, you had said, you'd love to touch on police reform because there are so many blurred lines. Sure. And when it comes to defunding the police, I just feel like there are so many blurred lines, and I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, let me jump in and say this. Where I did my learning was right here. This is not something I knew anything about. I hadn't actually taken the time to sit and dissect the systemic racism that goes on in the police force and why we need to defund the police. It would sound like a really crazy idea if I actually took the time and watched some speeches and actually read bullet points of what this meant. And you can't just take a catchphrase and then decide yes or no on how you feel about it. So that's going to say that right now, because anyone who actually read about what defunding the police means and took the time to say, what does it mean? I don't think would be on the opposite end of it. Reallocating funds to departments that could use it. And it's also taking the stress and strain out of our police departments, who are meant to serve so many different things and therefore are not experts at anything.
Right.
When they're actual people who are knowledgeable at certain things, who can deal with mental health issues, instead of someone who doesn't have that training, a police officer showing up not knowing how to address this person, or even identifying that this person has an illness and they get shot somehow. That's happening all the time. Could be people who actually deal with children that could come, and social workers that could come and deal with social issues, instead of having our police officers who furnish weapons and are weaponized. No one, even just for the person who has to even if they're not going to point a gun at them and it's not that severe in every case, just being the person on the receiving end of trying to get help and having someone in a very serious uniform with a gun, it's just not comfortable. There are better ways to do things. Even traffic violations. There are people who could deal with that. There are different ways that we can answer those calls. It's not a bad thing to actually give people a specialization and let them be good at their job, instead of giving one person all the power in the world and then saying, well, figure it out. Also, and put your life in danger. Yeah. Of course, napping. Of course, they're making the wrong decisions because they're not trained to make the right ones.
Right. they can't possibly be. That would be 10 careers. You know what I mean? I mean, you guess it could be people. And no, honestly, like the police themselves, that's a lot to take on. You know what I mean?
This is also a benefit to police officers, a huge. Right. This is not a detriment. No. Stands in the line of fire and says, "I'm going to protect and serve." Mm-hmm. You have to look a little deeper to what the actual issues are.
Right. I think that's a big thing within. I think that's a negative actually with social media. Unfortunately, I think that people hop on bandwagons. I hate to use that word, but they hop on bandwagons because they see hashtags or they see people they look up to spreading sometimes wrong information or articles that are just incorrect. And that's one thing that I really do think, like, hey, if you see something that speaks to you, take a second to research it, because you might not know exactly what it is that you're jumping on. And that's not fault, because it sounds maybe in the moment, maybe something you're seeing or something someone's highlighting or a false article or whatever it may be telling you one thing. But if you take the time to really break it down and do the research because you care, and because if you're going to be posting about it, you should care. I'm such a freaking passionate person, sometimes to a fault, that I want to know every little thing about it. And I do see people just like hopping on the hashtag train. And I'm like, dude, you got to do your research. It's really simple. Even if it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes a day, you know what I mean? Just reading and listening and learning. And there's so much out there. We have the internet, 2020.
Oh, it's, how many people have gone on my page alone? And gosh, there's got to be a million things I myself have posted about what it actually means, but have said in response to Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. And I'm like,
I can't even.
You're not even trying. You clearly haven't heard anything.
Literally nothing. I B2B one-on-one is I talk, like I like to speak on mental health, and I've talked about my struggles with anxiety and panic attacks in the past, and most recently, the beginning of this year, I struggled with depression for the first time in my life. I know we've had people on talk about body image and all of that. So I just wanted to quickly, touch on that with you and see where you were at, and see if you deal with any forms of mental illness and how you cope with them, and if you have any advice. I just think it's so important, especially right now with everything going on in the world, with this incredible movement, and with COVID and this pandemic. It is so important to keep this healthy.
Definitely I've battled with anxiety and depression, and it comes in waves, and for me, I haven't had a very bad episode or lull into a dark place in probably about a year and a half or 2 years, but I've been stuck in that place for at least upwards of like 3 years, in a place of just, for me, I deal with anxiety because I worry a lot, and it's just being
there, and you have the biggest heart.
It's control issues, and just being able to, reach and talk and communicate and relate to people in the way that I want to, and not being able to do it in the way that I want to, or as quickly as I'd like to. I deal with things like that. I think I managed my emotions incorrectly for a lot of years, just because I unfortunately didn't grow up with the tools, because my parents didn't grow up with the tools to understand and manage my anger, to manage disappointments, to kind of get out of what I call like a poor mentality, a mentality of always being fear-based and feeling like the cup is always half empty, and woe is me, and basically seeing the dark side of things more often than I saw the light side of things.
Right.
And for me, that's just been a lifelong exploration and understanding of what my circumstances and what I was predisposed to and born into, and how that shaped my mind to process things and think. And I kind of reshaped my own religion and my own spirituality, and found the things in the books and the words that made sense to me, and kind of adopted, for me, what I call like a love versus fear relationship with myself and the world around me. And that's kind of what's slowly but surely gotten me out of my anxiety states, when I'm depressed for long periods of time. All of it for me boils down to love and fear. And in this world, you're leading with one or the other. It's the yin and the yang. And when you are able to process things through a filter of love, you kind of can slowly but surely let those feelings of fear go and handle and deal with your own issues and your own insecurities and your own shortcomings better.
Yeah.
So that's, it's not, I took 3 pills and did this for me.
Right.
So it's hard to prescribe to anyone.
Of course.
But
person.
self-work for me. Mm-hmm. I've been working on self probably since I was 20. So like all of my 20s, I would say, was really just doing a hard reset of how I was told to think about things and how I was told to perceive the world, and making sure that I was okay with that, and changing the things that I wanted to look at differently, because I've done the research and said, actually, this is a better way to approach it, not the way that my dad and his mom taught him to approach things and deal with anger and fear and not having enough.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that it doesn't have to be one thing, and it can change, because we're always changing every day. Every day I feel like I learn new things about myself, truly, especially turning 30. It's been a really interesting, pivotal year, pivotal point in my life, I should say. Just so many realizations, and every day. It's just being vulnerable and open and honest, and knowing that that we're all constantly changing. We're just human beings. And I love that you said that, because it doesn't have to be one thing. Like, some people choose meditation. Some people choose gratitude journaling. Some people choose church. Some people choose going on a walk. Choose hobbies. And I just love when people open up about it. Just honestly knowing that if it speaks to one person, and just that one person knowing that someone as incredibly talented and beautiful and amazing as you, who's such an inspiration to me, deals with things like, I really just love breaking the silence on these things. You know what I mean? I just love the more people that I can collect on this page to share their journeys and and hardships and challenges and silly things that we go through in this crazy life. Just you feel less alone. Isolation is the devil. It's the worst.
The beautiful thread of oneness is what it's called. Of us all being the same in our very different, varied ways. We all go through it. It feels different. It looks different. It sounds different for different people, but we all go through it.
I always tell everybody, I'm like, when I speak in the schools, which I miss so much, I say, like, hey, the craziest thing you've ever thought, right? Or maybe like the most isolating feeling you've ever felt, or weirdest, whatever thing that has happened to you that you felt, nobody hasn't felt. There are billions of people on this planet, and there have been so many before you. And like, we're all human. So like, somebody's feeling this probably right now. And that alone just feels so good to hear. And the kids love it. It's just as simple as that. And so thank you so much for sharing, because I know it's sometimes not easy. And one thing I do love right now so much about social media, especially in the past year, I've seen so many people open up on so many different levels about so many different things. And but you were saying that you've done a lot of self work and internal work in your 20s. What would you go back and tell maybe 19-year-old Brytni, or Brytni prior to doing all of this work, the younger version of you? If you can go back and tell her one thing, what would you tell her?
Don't be afraid. That's it. Like, again, it took me a decade to figure out how to stop fearing life.
Girl, I get it.
Gosh, it's crazy to think that, you could be a normal processing human that's learned so many things, but you don't learn how to just jump and have fun and be free and open your heart and feel open and not be afraid. Being afraid is just the most crippling, horrible feeling ever. And it's stopped me from doing so many things, and it's slowed my progression from doing so many things, and it's kept me in negative spaces, and it's been the catalyst of my depressions and my anxieties, and it has prevented before it's ever allowed me to do anything.
Just like getting it out of my body, and even doing things like this, just like speaking on it and just saying, this is me, but I need to change it. I need to get it out of my damn body. You know what I mean? And that's why I love having these conversations with people like you, because it allows me in turn to have my little moments and get things out of my body. Even like I'm having a good day, but like this made my day better. So I love you, and thank you so much for coming on. And I need to see you soon because I just miss you and I want to hug you. I don't want this to be over.
I'll hug you with a mask.
Yes, in a mask. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing all of the work that you do with Buddha Bullying. It's really a beautiful, beautiful outreach, and I think you're saving lives, and that's all we should do in this world, and I hope more people do it.
Thank you.
Save lives. Go help someone outside of yourself. It'll make you feel better.
It really does. I promise. I can attest to it. I love it. It's like, it's my escape out of the crazy industry that we've taken on. I know there's lots of crazy industries, but this industry can really take a toll on one, especially during COVID when there's nothing to do. And this is my escape. It really is just connecting with people and loving on each other. Like my whole thing is just like you said, oneness, one world, one tribe. Like, let's go. And I love where we're at in the world right now. So thank you so much for opening up. I love you.
Thank you for letting me.
Let's talk soon, okay?
Okay.
Take care.